Hello, my fellow hemp nuts. Are you ready for the cannabis bonanza? Welcome to the.
Yeah. I need a haircut.
Welcome to the new Hemp Time show, recorded at Gotham Studios, the sweetest smelling podcast studio in the world. Today's episode is partially powered by McSorley's Chili Dogs, McSorley's Ale House, the oldest ale house in the United States. Also powered by Five and Dimes Old Fashions, handcrafted by Erin.
I like
quite
good.
But we know our limits now. Jan has set her own limits.
So we are, as usual, joined by me, Jahan Marcu, your cannabis researcher,
All right,
15 years
Jahan.
experience.
Dr. J.
Dr. J, yes.
J Boogie.
To my right, we have the unapologetic farmer, Randy Cameron Jr.
Hey.
And directly across from me, you might know him from HBO's Crashing and a number of other things, performing every week in Manhattan, living the dream.
Easy.
Greer Barnes.
Greer Barnes. That's me.
And our resident clinical social worker here with our check-in is Jan Roberts.
Yay.
Soon to be Dr. Jan. Soon to be, people.
We like calling the doc anyway.
True.
2 more months.
Yeah.
So,
that's
hey,
great.
we kind of wanted to start something a little different today.
Uh-oh.
I know. But we wanted to do a quick check-in before the show.
What kind of check-in?
Well, you know I am a therapist, right?
Right.
And
No
that
probation
means
officers.
no probation officers. And I just wanted to check in, see what we've been up to this
Cool.
week and any kind of cool stuff going on.
I'm fine, okay?
No. So this is our mini therapy session for the
Okay.
week. You've got a free therapist. You might as well,
Hey.
use it. So
It's an
how are you
intervention.
No. So how are you doing, Randy? What's been going on with you?
I'm good. I'm
Yeah?
really good.
Yeah. What's
So Brooklyn Sprout got office space
Nice.
officially today.
Yes!
That's right,
Yes!
you did.
Brooklyn Navy Yard,
Oh my God!
Wow.
Congratulations!
right under the Williamsburg. So that's good.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So you've
So
been
excited.
kind of focused on Brooklyn Sprout.
Yep.
I saw you got a new logo.
Got a new logo. What? A little magic from Doc Jan. Those hands. That.
Well,
what's the
Emily Camera. Emily. I know.
M.
She did the
now,
logo?
Now she's
Yeah,
M. Yeah,
she
did the
totally
logo.
did the logo. She's
I like it.
fantastic. She
Yeah,
works
she's
for
good.
my business partners in health and well-being. She's awesome.
Thanks, M.
I know. She's
Yeah,
great.
thanks.
And where can people see this wonderful new logo?
We should be able to put it up here.
Right there. Great.
One day.
Is it on
I need
social?
to make.
Well-
I need to make T-shirts. Our website isn't out yet, but you're right. We'll,
I love it.
So
We'll
you
help
got-
you with that.
You got new office space. You got a new logo.
new
This is
logo.
cool.
There's a kitchenette and bathroom, which I was
excited.
We gonna
about.
be cooking?
cooking and go use the bathroom.
Maybe we can do an off-site podcast at Brooklyn.
Got
Sprout
to.
one day.
Absolutely.
Maybe have live audience. Fun
Hey.
stuff.
Boom.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. All
We're
right.
getting there.
Good.
Yep.
I just like, this is the space I operate in. So for me, I needed a little part of me here today. So that's why I wanted
Good
to kind
idea.
of check in with you guys and see how my buddies are, because you are all the highlight of my week. So anywho, so Dr. J, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's been I think I had everything probably happen, last week that you could imagine in the spectrum, from this, sister-in-law being in town to, getting really close to getting some major research projects funded.
Yep.
Yeah. And, this weekend I attended something that I was really cynical about attending.
We both did.
Yeah.
We both did.
Excuse me, you asked me.
Oh, thank you. Here I am making it about me again. Damn it.
We'll get to you.
We need to get Jan a therapist.
Jen. That was this weekend.
So I attended this thing that I'd heard about called the Landmark Forum.
Okay.
Wow.
So it's like this intense. It's really hard to explain, but it uses a lot of philosophy and cognitive behavioral techniques to work on people who are like in business or relationships trying to improve stuff. So it's like a professional development course, but it was insane. Went from like the 10 a.m. every day,
9.
9 a.m. to 10 p.m. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, which just happened to coincide when my sister-in-law was in town, who I love.
You do.
Big
do
fan
try
of
there.
Very big. Well, yeah, she started this thing, and I was learning all these communication techniques in this forum, and she comes back from out of the town and says, God, people, she lives in Southern California, she's like, people in New York aren't as smart as the people in LA. And so for for the whole weekend, I kept saying things like, "Well, you have to break it down for me. I am not as smart as people in LA." I just like,
Wait, I don't think we talked about anything like that
Oh,
at the
snap.
forum.
"Oh, wait, that's why."
Get it
That's
off,
your
get it off
story,
your chest,
Jahan.
Dr. J.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
But no, it was just a very intense time.
Yeah.
And learning new things, new ways of looking at things, new ways of approaching things. And it's like, yeah, it was kind of like a balloon ride where you're like dropping weight so you can rise higher.
Yeah.
And
All right.
yeah, focus on
That's cool.
what's ahead of you and things like that. But I had heard about it a lot in podcasts, and I
Right.
never knew what it was. And at the advice of someone who's trying to help us with our project,
Yep.
they suggested we start this development course. So
And
that
it was geared towards any industry.
yeah.
Anything. And there were
Right.
people there on like news shows,
Yeah.
and people there
Yeah.
on like millionaire. It was, you saw everything from every walk of life. And we were very skeptical about it, incredibly. I was reading about it,
Yeah.
and I wish I wouldn't have, because I would have probably had a
Ruined
more
the scheme.
open mind.
Yeah.
But I hated it, to be
So how'd
quite
you-
honest with you.
How'd you walk away? You hated it? The third
No,
day?
I
Oh,
walked away like, holy shit,
Really?
what I learned and kind of started seeing about myself. They talk about your blind spots, being able to kind of connect with the things you don't know about yourself, and really connecting with that. And I walked away, and I was very skeptical. We would make fun of it. I hated the moderator.
Yeah.
And walked away like, holy shit, I have a whole new way of looking at things.
Really?
And so we actually, because I was like, is this like a fucking cult? What's going on here?
See?
You know?
Yeah.
And they do a sales pitch, but I have to tell you, our consultant really had suggested it, and I get it now. Because
Was
one
it
of my
expensive?
no, not for the. We spent 40 hours. We also had to do a thing last night till 10:30, 10:45, and I learned it was a lot. It was well worth it.
All right.
Well worth it. But it was interesting because I kind of walked away learning a lot about myself, like how I tend to approach a lot of things in fear, and I'm always afraid of everything. And was able to kind of go back and see where it came from, and how it's impacted me personally, professionally. And it was like, holy fuck. Like, I'm sitting at a concert Monday night, and all these stories are going on in my head, and I'm like, this is what gets me in trouble. It's when I start doing certain things. And so I came away with a lot of insight, and I'm excited to kind of see what's going to happen. I feel a lot lighter, if that makes sense. It was nutty.
Well, no, you're confusing the program with the presenter.
Yeah. Wait,
that-
she was
so the
like
content
this
was on point.
90s music star.
Boy Crazy.
Boy Crazy. This band called Boy Crazy.
The response to New
It was
Kids on the
funny.
Block, the
Yeah.
all-female
Yeah,
response.
yeah. It was
Really?
kind of
Put out
funny.
an album.
She had like
Never heard of them
I
either.
know, right?
I guess they
I
wasn't
know.
that crazy about boys.
Because we were too old. They went
Oh.
for the teenage kids.
Okay.
Okay.
Anyhow.
So the new boys
So
on the
anyway,
block,
so
right?
that
Or
was
new
fun.
kids, or
Right.
So what about you, Greer?
What have you
What's
been doing?
going on with you?
We know you did some push-ups.
Oh yeah, I did push-ups.
What else
Okay,
has been
but
up?
before that,
More push-ups.
No,
More.
you didn't.
No,
When are you going to Las Vegas?
I'm going to Vegas the end of the month.
Oh, okay.
But I did get a call from Todd Phillips, the director of the Joker film, and I had. So anyway, I think I'm still in it.
Why did you think they were going to edit your part out?
Nah, I don't know, but stranger things have happened.
Wait,
kid.
wait,
are you playing the
What's-
penguin or
Uh-oh.
something?
No, I'm actually playing
Wait.
the Riddler. No, I'm kidding.
Wait. Did you say? Wait.
I
Did you
think-
say Joker or choker?
Joker.
A Joker.
As
Oh,
in Batman.
Like the
Fucking
movie
man.
coming out in October.
Big.
October
Look how he,
4th.
Wait,
look how he
are you
plays it off.
telling
Look how he
me
freaking plays
That
it
I'm
off.
sitting next to a guy that's going to be on the big screen.
Yeah,
Can
well,
we
it's
sit
not-
around and guess what character
I'm
you
sorry.
are?
you need
it's,
to
it's
sit
not.
with it.
It's nothing.
But
believe me.
you were
Like
in
I'm not
it
like a.
regardless. Even if you're on the
Yeah,
cutting floor, the
I
cutting
mean-
room floor, you had this opportunity. This dude never talks about himself, does he?
I don't. You know.
We're sending him to the landmark forum. Jahan, we're sending him to the landmark forum. Just kidding.
It's the landmark form.
That place they just went to. Weren't you
Oh.
listening to
Drink
it?
good.
the Kool-Aid, Greer. Drink the Kool-Aid. Just kidding. No, so, oh my God, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you feel about that?
Good.
Did you get to like sit in the Batmobile or like ride the Joker's car?
Nah, this is just strictly about the Joker. This
Can
is,
you
Okay.
can you tell us what you did?
Nope.
Okay, that's fair. All right, good. So, anything else going on with you?
No.
No.
It's, I'm funny.
Well, that is fantastic news.
Yeah.
Thank you
And
for
you're
sharing that.
smart.
I can tell you I'm about to turn somebody down to do a television spot.
I hope they're listening.
I hope they listen
Oh.
to it.
Someone
call.
tag
I
them.
can't wait to have this conversation
Yeah.
after the podcast.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't.
Yeah, please don't tell me till the show's done.
Yes.
Definitely. Like,
And for
yeah,
our wait, for our platinum dollar subscribers on
Hey,
Patreon, we will tell you what it is.
I was actually thinking of changing one of the names of our sponsorships to definitely over the legal limit for Patreon, because we have the One Hitters Club, we have all these
I like
funny
that.
names.
Yeah.
But I was like trying to think of something a little more high risk.
That works.
Yeah, that works.
I like that.
Oh my God, I got it. All right, peeps. So, well, it's good. It sounds like we're having some good productive time, and we're having fun with New
Yeah.
Hemp Times too, right?
Heck yeah.
I know.
So
Good
let's
stuff.
get with what we came here
Yeah.
today to talk about cannabis.
Woo!
And I want to talk about our word of the day, and it's a little bit of a weird word, but I stumbled across this while doing some research on hemp. But it's called you've heard of, like, I don't know if you've heard of like dichotomous and monoecious plants, like male female plants. There's this thing called Monoecy, Monecy, and it's when you have the male and female flowers on the same plant. Yeah.
Hermaphroditic.
Yes, exactly. And that hermaphroditic thing can actually be bred into plants.
Yep.
And that's what people have been doing for such a long time. I found this.
That's what?
I found this. People have been doing this for a long time with hemp.
Yep.
The USDA did a study, 2 sets of studies that lasted like 30 years, starting in 1902, and like bought hemp from like Romania and China and France, and found out that they had bred these plants to produce male and female flowers. And the reason why that's important is that cannabis is usually, dioecious. It has, male flowers and female flowers. If it grows wild, it just kind of naturally produces an even ratio. The male flowers release pollen, then those plants die, and then it causes, seeds to form.
Right.
So what's interesting is that this is how you can sort of artificially increase the resin collection in the plant. Because if you normally have male hemp plants, they're going to produce probably like 0.5% oil. It's just a tiny bit. But if you could get them to grow female flowers, then there's still kind of these fibrous plants, and you can get the resin production up to like 5% or so. Not quite like the 25% resin we see in plants.
Right.
But that really kind of changes the game a little bit if you think about it, because if you're growing hemp for resinous extraction, are you going to use this really dispersed group, or are you going to use it? And actually, the French cultivars, all like the French hemp plants, are these monoecious with male and female plants appearing on them. It's like they're specialty plants for paper pulp, animal breeding, construction materials. And their breeding techniques to this day have been aimed at the maintenance of these cultivars that are reducing THC content and increasing resinous content.
So let me just ask,
just
where we're more female flowers, more resinous content in the same group of flowers that are being cultivated, and that of course yields more product.
So monoecious is a strategy to create these monoecious plants versus having separate male female plants. So it's a little more useful, impactful. Because I was scratching my head, I'm like, how are people getting such high CBD yields from hemp plants?
And it's because of this practice?
Yeah, of like getting the potentially to make the plants hermaphrodites. And that's a technique, and you can genetically breed them to do that more often, because normally it's like an aberration occurs every now and then because of stress, not enough light, not enough soil. But if you get plants that are just prone to doing that, suddenly your crop changes.
I mean, we've seen stressed out, stressed out plants that stretch and males pop in all of a sudden
with a million seeds in them.
Right.
Yeah.
But no, go ahead.
I was going to say that, and that seed production is a thing too, because what can do is go through and clip out a lot of the male flowers, unless you want seeds, because then the plants will grow a lot tend to have a higher yield of seeds.
Will those seeds also within themselves, will they produce hermaphrodite plants?
That's a great question. So yeah, so it's estimated
or
that,
is this a pure technique? Is what I'm asking.
it's a
You know what I mean?
combination of the two things. And so about according to published literature, I'm sure there's some old ass farmer listening to this being like, it happens all the time, but like 25 to 30% of the seeds will be like regular cannabis plants, but the majority will remain this character. But if you let them grow on their own, they'll go back to their sort of natural thing. And one thing I also wanted to talk about is the female plant has these little hairs on it. You've seen the hairs.
One more question before you go into that. So why don't they just feminize these seeds and eliminate the?
Because then that'd be cannabis. That'd be medical cannabis. That's a whole other permitting system, right?
Okay.
Because the terminology is really important here. Though the hemp is cannabis with 0.3% or under. Also, there are arguments over what it looks like and how it's grown. But here's the thing that I struggle with when you talk about these monoecious plants versus the all-female medical cannabis plants, is that people can grow them outdoors. And I just think from a purely capitalistic standpoint, what has a lower entry level? Growing with the light of the sun, or building some place and paying a massive electric bill and buying lights and halogen lights and specialty bulbs and things like that, when you could just grow the whole crop outdoors and produce essentially the same thing, this resin.
But then you're relying on Mother Nature to be really nice. And at the rate we're going, we don't know how the weather is going to,
what it's going to do.
Yeah, what's going to do.
That's a good point, because things like certain specialty crops, white asparagus and chicory and this stuff, that's all grown indoors. It's that's not something that those are specialty crops.
Specialty crops meaning what? That they
meaning
were
there's
man-made?
really there's a level of controlled environment that you really need.
I understand this, but is this man-made? Like from what I hear,
human-made.
Yeah, did man make this? Is this the splicing of a couple of vegetables to make this white asparagus? You know what I mean? Like, or does it? Was it naturally?
Are you meaning genetically engineered?
Yes, thank you.
It's
well, you can adjust
selected.
the environment, like temperature in the room, to make a blue plant, or to take chlor. You lose pigmentation, and so. Is that right, Jay?
Yeah. So I think in the U.S., when it comes to cannabis, there are very few people who are breeding plants for the purposes of creating new varieties. Most people buy clones and stocks of plants. Varieties have been established a long time ago. But other places, this sort of breeding and controlled breeding happens. So like when you grow something outdoors, I'm just going to speak conceptually here, right? Whatever grows the best in that environment is going to flourish and be like, yes, more of that, more of that. And when you go indoors, certain plants do better indoors, right? You don't want a plant that grows like a train wreck, like the variety train wreck grows like a train wreck. It's like shoots over here, shoots over here. That messes up your whole system, right? You want plants that grow a certain consistent way.
See a green.
Right?
Yeah.
You don't want them growing up to the lights, right? So you're going to select plants that grow in the environment. It's a combination of the genetics and the environment working together, and then selectively continuing to propagate those plants that are meeting whatever conditions you want. And so if you want asparagus that's white and of a certain taste and consistency, you're going to start with a bunch of asparagus and be like, ooh, batch 4 turned out really good. I'm going to, clone those and do a bunch of them. So it's not like they're taking like the top of one asparagus and splicing it to the bottom of another one, or like adding fish genes. It's a slower process.
Fish genes. They grow underwater.
That's another idea someone's writing down right now.
Wait, I want to see.
Got gills.
Do they have fish corduroys? Is that just not good?
What is fish
fish genes,
fish,
get
yeah,
it?
fish
See, get the genes.
All right.
Thank
No,
you. Okay,
you're
I'm
getting
done.
closer. You got one day. I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna get one of your jokes.
You told me to be mean.
Be you. Keep going. Maybe it's me. I'm slow.
Oh my God.
So probably the best varieties grown are probably from China that do this hermaphroditic process, because they've been doing it for thousands of years. They're ahead of the game. And there's even, like I said, there's been these studies published about the USDA's hemp breeding experiments, which began in 1903 and continued off and on until like even the 60s or 70s. And it was through actually this process of breeding hemp to produce this sort of monoecious, like male-female things, that led to the creation of the high THC varieties, because it required the same techniques. Like we want all female plants. We want all female plants, which is odd because it's like a male-dominated industry with a female plant. But
it's typical. It's called patriarchy. Sorry, guys.
Hey, it's the truth.
But what's interesting is plants that produce a lot of resin also sometimes tend to be really good seed producers. Not necessarily viable for growing, but maybe used for nutritional products and other things. But yeah, so monoecious is, or monoecy or hermaphrodite are our word or words of the day. And it's an important breeding technique that makes a lot of what's possible with hemp, because if it was just strictly male plants, they'd release their pollen into the air and just die. But with this sort of technique, you can get kind of the best of both worlds, both a textile and something that produces that useful resin.
It's amazing
to look into this.
But it's amazing to me how much we don't kind of know about the history and how like integrated into our society and culture hemp was. You know, and people still want to relegate it to like hippie clothing and stuff like that, but it's really kind of a hallmark of what this country was built on.
Well, is there any Native American history with usage of
Probably.
So that is one of my favorite questions, actually, is how did hemp get to North America? How did it get here? Well, because it wasn't here earlier, and it came in two primary routes. You can argue there's some other ones, but the ones we have the best evidence for is, one is Cortez, when he came to South America, and he brought hemp seeds with him, and he went up to the natives, the Incans and the Mayans, was like, hey, I got this great plant. It produces food. They're like, we have corn and potatoes. We're good. And he's like, oh, okay, well, you can also use it for clothing. They're like, we have cotton. We got the Coachella beetle. We can dye. We're good. He's like, well, it also is a medicine and an intoxicant. And they're like, we have 60 different types of mushrooms. Like, we're good. We're good.
I'm tripping right now.
So it didn't actually take off, but where it did take off were these Spanish missionaries all grew hemp, had hemp plantations. And so there's one very famous Spanish missionary still existing today in San Francisco in the Mission District. That old mission had a hemp plantation. Really? And so all the Spanish missions were growing hemp for food, fiber, clothing, and as medicine.
When was this, Jahan?
Probably like I think it was like 1500s and onward. You saw this expansion of hemp grown, and probably up until the late 1800s, there were still some of these out in the boonies, like growing hemp and things like that. But that's just the West Coast. And then you have these other varieties that showed up when some of my ancestors rolled up on the East Coast. And they're like, hey, how are we going to conquer this world if we don't have hemp? And so they introduced hemp varieties. That's how we made our flags, our jeans, and sails. The first drafts of the Constitution were written on hemp paper. And so you had these two sort of hemp, and they were even ordered to grow hemp by I think King George and things like that, and Thomas Jefferson, I think, or George Washington, both had hemp plantations, and also considered key for a very strong nation needed it, especially for ropes for ships and things like that. And so you had these two sort of land races being introduced, and you might think that that's where our cannabis comes from today, but probably not. Probably comes from a lot of Dutch breeders who interbred plants. There's a guy, David Watson. He's pretty infamous.
Now, just because I was about to ask about how to get into the West Indies, and the Dutch colonized the West Indies big time. So is that leading to where?
Yeah, and I was thinking a little bit more modern.
Or was it previously already?
That is a good question. And that is actually something that's up for like debate.
Because all this shit was connected at one point.
Is when did hemp or cannabis first appear, like in Jamaica?
Right.
Right? That is a question that is hotly debated. Some people believe it's always been there, and other people are like, no, this happened when there was...
I'm a believer it was always there.
Always.
Now white man bring it.
Check up on the hill. 400 year. That bud right there, grow.
Y'all are nuts.
Yeah, so that'd be interesting.
So yeah, so that's part of the debate is was it brought over from Europe and Africa and Russia with trading and things like that.
Yep.
Or but there isn't a lot of hard evidence to suggest. I mean, there's a lot of plants like that blows your mind. Like it's hard to imagine, for example, just to show you how many plants have been isolated from populations for such a long time. It's hard to imagine Chinese food without chili peppers, right?
Right.
But that is a modern thing. Before like the 1700s, all Chinese food was made with like mustard. Like there was no chili peppers.
What?
It all comes from South America and trade.
So there was no Szechuan style cooking
That was
before 18.
Wow.
Wow.
Or like 1700s, 1600s, when the Dutch East India Company was trading all over the world, they introduced that. They started growing it in China.
Wow.
Just like there used to be only one place where tea was grown and came from, right? China, right? So these chocolates the same way, man. Chocolate was almost as and coffee too. They used to raid coffee houses back in the day to shut them down, just like they raided dispensaries because they thought they were where people can't get together to talk about overthrowing the government, and it was bad for you, and people got like intoxicated. I read this is
be careful, Starbucks.
Yeah.
What are they doing in the basement?
What y'all doing down there?
We
just percolating.
We just grinding.
Oh my god.
But like for example, people think that it's just cannabis that's gotten the raw end of the deal, but even chocolate. I found this document from a French doctor. He put out a warning to the people of France, targeted at women. It says, this chocolate was being imported. There was a huge demand for it. And he's like, oh, no. You can't eat this because if white women eat chocolate, they'll have brown babies. That is
brilliant.
Literally a medical alert in like the 1800s.
What?
Against
Don't eat the chocolate.
I can't make this up.
Oh, God. You will have brown babies. Oh, my God. Are you serious?
Yes.
That was hilarious.
There's a book called Plants and Empire.
God damn it, you were at the chocolate again. Well, you're not. No, I was not at the chocolate.
What's in the corner of your mouth?
Do you guys feel like you're sitting with an encyclopedia?
I love it.
Dr. J, I love it.
It's brilliant.
You know so much.
Yes,
Jahan.
man. Yeah, man.
Sorry.
Wow,
I think
fucking hilarious.
Yeah, and then
I am so gonna turn that into a joke.
Please do.
Oh my!
I got a
God.
bunch of those crazy facts that I can't do anything with. Except
Oh man,
Willy Wonka was a gangster, dude. Just making chocolate. Yo, slow.
No, please don't stop. Willy Wonka was the OG.
He was an OG, dude.
Willy Wonka OG. We're gonna come up with a week called Willy
Oh my
Wonka
god!
OG.
Wait, please do a skit around Willy Wonka OG. Please do a skit around Willy Wonka OG. Oh my god! Sorry.
Wow. What's this French doctor's name, yo?
Oh, I'd have to look it up. We can put it in the show notes because I'm sure some people are listening to this like, what the hell is he talking about? But it was actually, it was a leaflet that he handed out to his patients, put in the freaking newspaper, and he is not the worst of it. That is the most PG one. But there's tons of things like that when plants come from other places and they don't originate there. People say the most outlandish things. Coffee beans and coffee, that stuff was not taken lightly when it started showing up in Holland and places because they thought it was like imagine having a place where people could go and do dabs and stuff like that. That's what they viewed it as. It was just like it was a narcotic.
Really?
Coffee houses were like the equivalent of like opium dens. Wait,
coffee houses are the equivalent of the coffee houses in Amsterdam?
No, these were just straight up. People would go there to drink this black brew that people didn't understand what it did. They just thought it like made you crazy, caused psychosis. It's just
gave you black babies.
Yeah, probably. Well, that's the macchiato. So you get the...
Damn it! Can you even say that now? Macchiato?
Oh my god. We're gonna get some letters. Okay.
From Macchiato Jackson.
Macchiato Jack. And what's his brother's name? Macchiato Jackson.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Macchiato. Is that a drink?
A macchiato? Yes.
Really?
Yeah. Caramel macchiato.
Oh my god.
You're learning new things all the time.
I know. First, we started with check-ins, then hemp. Man, I feel like I've toured the universe with plants already. I love this. Learning lots from you, buddy.
Thank you. So
chocolate and coffee, two of the I think those are probably two of the biggest sellers on the planet.
Two of the best things ever.
And at one time, there was intense political and regulatory resistance. Some places banned coffee houses and stuff like that.
So are you saying that it could it's a great kind of analogy for where we are with cannabis in a sense? Because back then, they had all these issues with it. It was that caffeine madness instead of reefer madness, it sounds like. And now here we are hundreds of years later doing the same thing with something that was normal and basically doesn't really kind of cause any big problems.
Was it a stronger strain of coffee back then? Like, was the caffeine leave you? Maybe it did.
It was probably completely
out of place.
What is this black stuff? I don't know.
I'm just shaking.
Oh my God.
Well, imagine you had never had any caffeine before in your life, and someone makes you a quadruple shot because they don't know what they're doing. They're still figuring it out.
Right.
And you
was it coffee or was it espresso? Because when you're saying that,
Turkish
that
coffee,
shot,
it's probably more like Turkish coffee where they were.
It
was like a bean juice that they were making.
I wonder what you can do with that.
You rub it on your. What?
Stuff it.
What was that?
You ever have Turkish coffee where they've got that that
grounds?
Yes, I was in Turkey. I saw it. Turkish coffee.
That would have been funny if you went with it.
Please go with it. Where was he going?
He was gonna make a rub. You rub, you make a nice rub with it.
It's good for your face. Put that shit in a fancy white jar with a name on it.
I bet you it would.
Put some fragrance in it.
And I'll probably
put this on your face, and it'll clear out your blackheads and Turkish coffee.
You know what, Greer? It probably would.
That's our second business
what
idea.
Else can you do with this stuff? Because people,
you give
this is what's left.
I'm gonna try it.
Like Vegemite, right? That's like the leftover of something, isn't it? Like beer or yeast.
What is it?
It's
Vegemite.
The sandwich?
No,
yeah,
man,
Vegemite sandwich, but it's a spread.
Spread on.
Yeah, I Love Lucy. She worked at the factory, right?
Yeah.
It's like that black goop. It's like
we're showing our age.
And it's like,
did you see that when you went down there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't. I
Wait,
think
did you ever
tried
have?
It,
so.
It wasn't.
Did you ever have the beer down in Australia?
Of course.
Like Cooper's. That was my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
And it had like sediment in it, and yeah.
Like a cloudy wheat beer.
Yeah. But
I had kangaroo jerky.
Really?
I wouldn't recommend that.
Did you have Tim Tams?
It sounds chewy.
I had Gator Croc.
And
that was my second time though having that. The first time I had it was here, but it was in like a tomato based.
We actually hit when I was down there. We hit a kangaroo.
Really?
Literally, I was on a bus in the middle of the
Australians
outback.
punch kangaroos all the time.
Yeah, I punched the kangaroo in the face.
I mean, they have a man chest.
Did you really?
Yeah, I punched him in the face. He called me the N-word. I'm like, what? What's wrong with you, yo? I'm kidding. He hopped up on me.
Them things will gut
Good
you.
night,
Oh my
mate.
God!
They lean
Those
on the
emus
tail.
are the.
No, I don't.
I hate this.
I can't fuck with a pigeon. So that emu shit. That motherfucker's 7 feet. I'm like,
Have you ever eaten pigeon? It's actually okay. So I was
Tastes like chicken.
I was in Ireland at Bono's hotel and restaurant that he owns in Dublin. And that was the time that I actually caught the security guard at his. Okay, that's another
right. No,
story.
we gotta let it go.
We're not going to talk about that story
after the show.
But so anyway, I am at the Hotel Clarence, and it's this wonderful restaurant. He owns the hotel, and they serve pigeon. Yeah, and I was like, why not? I'll try it. It was incredible. It was so good. It was like duck. It tasted just like duck.
But there's no fat in a pigeon.
But
New York
so
pigeons.
Well, that's why it's
rich.
Disgusting when you think of New York pigeons. They walking around. They
yesterday,
got claws
that
missing and eyes missing. They
what
smoking.
about the one yesterday?
Oh, that one when we was in. He flew. He was inside. He used to be in there.
A pigeon.
Yeah, he was
on the platform.
42nd Street.
Have any of you ever been to Ireland?
I was in Ireland.
Yeah, I've been there.
Did you ever go to the Dublin Mountains?
No, I was in Killarney.
Okay. I was telling this to a patient today. I'm not lying. I was in the
Still
Dublin
beautiful.
Mountains. It was spring, and I swear to God, it smelled just like Irish Spring soap.
What? That's my
we were
favorite.
joking today about it.
And how much hash did you have?
None. I was totally sober, but it was just like, oh my God. It was like around St. Patty's Day. And I was like, oh my God, it really
nailed
does.
it.
It smells like the friggin' soap. This is why this soap smells
The guy
like
with
that.
the knife, remember?
Yeah,
the little leprechaun.
Oh.
Nice.
Okay, anywho.
All right, you guys sound warmed up. Are we ready to do some findings or fiction? Some
Yeah,
news?
let's get
All
it on.
right. Well,
Wait, our sound guy's laughing at us when you're trying to corral us
that's
back.
fine. You don't need to point it out. It's fine. I am well aware. So, when you hear something strange about marijuana, who are you gonna call? CannaBusters.
That's right.
So the purpose of this is twofold, guys. One is to find out, is this headlines I'm going to read you for the news, and we'll do some science. Are they real headlines? But is the story they're about? Can we bust that open a little bit? Is it a real news story? Is it based on baloney? You know,
Yeah.
that's what CannaBusting's about.
Yeah.
So first you
Like
sniff
that a
out
lot.
whether it's something I made up, and if the story is a real is worth being a headline. So
Okay.
we're gonna.
So this is replacing the way we used to do
Well,
it.
we were doing it informally.
Okay,
So
cool.
so
First,
first,
the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Basically?
yeah, just setting the ground rules for the people who are listening who hadn't participated before, and feel free to put your answers on the Facebook page while we do this as well.
Awesome.
So our first headline: Charlie Sheen is still winning with new weed brand Sheenius. Charlie Sheen is still winning with new weed brand Sheenius.
Oh my God.
Is this?
You know what, man?
Winning.
This dude, I wouldn't be a bit surprised if this was fact. I'm gonna say yeah.
Jan?
I'm gonna say fake
Why do you think it's fake?
because I think he's trying to be sober, and I think he kind of follows the 12-step models. So then I wouldn't imagine that he would be doing that.
Interesting.
I'm gonna say it's true. He's in rehab, but although he's in rehab, he's still a good businessman.
Oh, I love
He
that
put
answer.
the product
It's
out,
about the do re
first.
mi fa
Right.
sol la ti do.
There it is.
That was good.
And the answer is
Oh, you mate.
So Sheenius is a real headline.
He's a
Oh
businessman.
my
So much
gosh.
like Seth Rogen's house plant, there is now a
Yeah.
brand, lifestyle brand, cannabis
Yeah.
brand that Charlie Sheen is putting out there. Still winning, kind of.
Winning.
All right, good job. All right, next.
is no weed smoking part of his recovery?
I don't know. Usually in 12-step programs, it's
Oh,
abstention from anything, abstinence from anything.
Yeah, but those guys, I don't mean to get off topic, but when they go to rehab, I don't think it's because of marijuana.
no,
These
he,
guys
he
are
was
going
totally
in
No,
like,
they were
hard.
no.
No, they-
Either alcohol or
But it's-
opioids.
She was
but
just
or
saying
No,
when
no,
you're
no.
in it, you can't do
do
anything.
anything except
Right.
smoke
For the
a pack
12
of
Right.
cigarettes
This,
a day.
well, it goes back
And
to
coffee
and my,
and
well,
chocolate. Yeah,
hold on,
chocolate.
Hello.
And chocolate.
All right, I was trying to say here that this goes back to like, does harm reduction versus abstinence work? And that's a huge argument in like 12-step programs. They want you to be completely abstinent, and a lot of like
cigarettes even.
no, caffeine and cigarettes totally allowed,
See?
and sex.
Those are two
Even
drugs.
though you're not supposed to have
And
sex in
sex.
your first year, but there's lots of hanky-panky going on in these rooms.
Addiction
And
too.
yeah,
Another
well,
addiction,
other
potentially.
addictions and
Right.
a lot of
Three.
shit. But so there's this whole belief that the only way you can get someone better is complete abstinence. And what we know is that there's this huge like industry where their goal is this model, but they know you're going to relapse so many times. So this is like billions of dollars
They're counting
making.
on you to relapse.
Relapsing.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not uncommon as a
Yep.
therapist to say, you might have to relapse several times before, like 6-8 times and stuff like that. And people internalize if they smoke a joint or if they do one thing, they internalize this belief that they failed at this. And so there's this argument right now in addictions is, do we look at that kind of model, which is really what the biggest proponents go for, or do you look at harm reduction, which means, do we try to get you off the big stuff, try to get you engaged in life, try to reduce the harm that you're doing to yourself? And so there's this huge kind of debate within my field about that. And I don't know, it's kind of interesting. So I was that's why I was so
That's
shocked
heavy.
that he did that he's doing that, because I know he was talking about trying to stay sober.
And that is still in the gray area, although a lot of the text that was on his website has now been removed. People are thinking he may have chilled after a year of sobriety. But on the website, he had statements like, I'm tired of pretending like I'm not special. I'm tired of pretending like I'm not a bitchin', a total freaking rock star from Mars.
He's manic again.
Oh,
that's what that is.
So he's
starting
mania. April 2nd in 20 select dispensaries. Really? You can get Grandma's perfume, Millie's vanilla, and other products. Vape
he
pens
worries me
Grandma's
so much.
perfume. So that's some creepy shit right there.
What was that? His Instagram?
That was on the website for the company.
Oh my God!
But it was
that might not
down.
have been his statement, though. You think it was?
But he did say
he was. I mean,
he did say. But he did. There was a video up there, and he said that all the strain names after him were all bootleg, and he never made a nickel off of it, and it didn't seem fair because people were putting out strains called Winning and Charlie Sheen and things like that. You know, don't look at me like that. I'm just the messenger.
Wow.
I get that.
That's just crazy.
Yeah. Imagine if someone put out a variety called Little Greer. You'd be like, oh, whoa.
That's right.
He just worries me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
He just worries me.
All right. So, are you guys ready for the next one?
Yes.
Do it.
All right,
We're
Marvel. Our next headline is Marvel Studios sues marijuana paraphernalia company for selling Avengers bongs. Marvel Studios sues marijuana paraphernalia company for selling Avengers bongs. So you're off seeing Chris Evans with the shield on a dab rig. Would Disney/Marvel go after a company?
Oh yeah.
If that were factual, they would. But I'm going to say that's bullshit.
And elaborate a little bit on that.
Because I think these guys know how huge this is that we're not going to be. They would have to have so many of these things. I have never seen any. In all of the places I've gone to, I haven't seen it. So therefore, it can't be. I think it would have to be massive at a massive level where. I'm going to call bullshit. I think it would have to be the massive level for that to happen. One. Two, I think these guys understand the law where you can't. I mean,
but there's some creative commons.
You can draw. I guess if you're nice with your art, you can do something. But when you start to try to sell it, there's the problem. But it would have to be on a massive scale, I think.
Production of these
You know, Greer, you actually just talked me into that. I was thinking that I was going to say, yeah, that probably happened. But after that argument, I'm going with no. I agree with you.
Yeah.
I don't think that happened.
See, I just had a vision.
Yes.
I got that bong.
Exactly. It's the Hulk. It's the Hulk Iron Man bong. It's featured at the Cannabis something in Colorado. And they were sued. It's true.
Uh-oh. Let's see.
Did you lead me down the wrong path, Greer?
Is this the end game for this company?
Yes. Same bat channel.
It is completely false.
You led me down the right path, buddy.
But it sounds believable to me.
Absolutely. But I think these guys know about, what is it, like trademark infringement and stuff. And they know, you would have to have Marvel endorse that. And they wouldn't.
Yeah,
I want a Captain America bond.
Oh, there you go.
Well,
all right.
Maybe you can license
Iron Man.
Badass. All right. Moving on to the next headline. As new cannabis products gain traction, pass the joint may turn to pass the eyedropper. As new cannabis products gain traction, pass the joint may turn to pass the eyedropper. Is this a finding? Is this fiction? Are you gonna pass?
Some of these guys are so brilliant that, I don't know, maybe it is a way you can take it under the tongue, can't you? You know what I mean?
Oh, so it's not that far away.
Like, that's what I'm thinking. Like, why? I mean, can't you dose hallucinogenics through the eye or whatever? Like, oh man, but that could be bullshit though.
They used to put it as disgusting. Yeah,
it could be.
No,
it
we
could
used to
be.
hear people. I'm putting the tamarind in your what?
Are you
no,
serious?
why would you put it in your eye so you can see it?
Yeah, and you see yourself tripping.
Are you fucking serious?
I used to, dude. I used to hear, yeah.
I don't. Oh,
at least that was
gosh.
stories we hear.
I'm just thinking about what, where, how, right? Like, I mean, what are you gonna pull from the plant? Oil, and then what are you gonna do? How are you gonna break that oil down into something where you can drop into your eye?
Don't worry, I'm sure it will go under every type of product safety test
I'm saying
before it's sold.
I know somebody.
I'm gonna say that's bullshit too. No, I'm gonna say that is true. It's true.
I'm going to
Jan.
say it's bullshit.
Why?
Well,
gonna say it's true.
okay.
These
So
guys are
my
brilliant.
thought was initially that we know CBD potentially impacts ocular pressure, and then that THC actually would help remediate that pressure.
Yep,
So
yep.
maybe I just changed my answer to yes.
Yes, you did.
I
I
just
knew you
talked
made it
myself
through that.
into
Yes,
it.
made me
You
think my
gave-
thought process was right.
Sorry.
Randy?
I think you gave the answer either last week or 2 weeks ago.
Oh.
With brain receptors, I believe it's true because the speed at which it would get to these points from a drop
Right.
in the eye
Versus your gut.
versus your gut.
You remembered what he said.
You see?
But the cannabinoid receptors, what did you
Yeah,
talk about?
exactly. You nailed it.
Wait,
Yep.
The cannabinoids. We need to make up a superhero group.
Cannabinoid receptions.
I'm pretty sure Cypress Hill is that correct.
Yeah.
But
They
this
Oh my
is
God.
a Forbes headline
Yeah.
in their
Boom.
magazine, national
We're getting
headlines
smart.
about
We're
part.
paying attention.
See, and this is you guys are on the pulse here a little bit because as the market changes, the consumer base changes, so do the ways people like to administer these products. And you know, there is a market for every type of thing. Some people, I know some people cannot inhale things, and you know the analogy I like to use is I know people who can't swallow pills, and so they use that powdered aspirin and like
Yeah.
mix it in water. And so I think as the cannabis industry evolves, we're going to find people who are using other types, other formulas. My only concern is that I know it's going to sound a little weird, but it just seems odd that if I go to the corner store to get regular eye drops, that has to go through some FDA process.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I just feel a little weird about some guy being, I'm going to put some oil in this, shake it up, and then sell it the next day. It's like there should be a checkpoint in there that you know, I don't know if animal research is the correct answer, but there should be some sort of like, hey, get 10 people together in some controlled thing and make sure it works as intended. But good job.
Once you get ready to laugh at,
What if it makes your eyes bloodshot? Dude? It's like, are you stoned? You know, just like no, I
I
swear
had
I'm not. Yeah,
Have you been smoking weed? Definitely not.
Definitely not.
I can't inhale things.
I swear, Mom, I did not smoke it.
Oh my God.
So all right.
Leave the drops in the house medicine cabinet.
Oh my God.
Your mom's be getting hot.
Right.
You know, my eyes are a little dry.
Right,
Let
my
me
eyes are
try
dry.
this.
Right, Grandma.
Grandma.
She be in there making cookies.
Hey guys, you want some brownies?
Hey, you made some more yesterday, Grandma.
Oh man.
Oh, happy Wednesday, everybody.
Happy Wednesday.
All right.
Mhm.
So, as we know, there are a lot of issues in the cannabis industry with race and gender. So this next headline, is it a finding? Is it fiction? The cannabis industry has always been rooted in racism. Black chefs are pushing back. The cannabis industry has always been rooted in racism. Black chefs are pushing back.
Black chefs meaning like cooks, people
Right.
who cook.
People who,
Chef.
like bakers, chefs, you know.
Well,
we
you know,
get
there's
high.
a few of them out there, dogs. I've been reading up
You mean
on
that
them.
use cannabis in their recipes and executive chefs that cook with it?
Yeah.
Not cooks that get high.
No, I know that. Cheeseburger, pick it up, pick.
Bang.
I had a
Hey,
image.
Clarence.
Why is there a bite missing out of my sandwich? Clarence.
He's in the bathroom. I was taking my 10-minute break. That's all.
Did you have to take the burger with you?
That's how you build a joke.
There you
All
go.
right, back to it.
Damn, we are actually
So,
really good.
Randy, you've been going last.
Yeah.
I think you should start it off this time.
Oh, it's too much pressure with a black subject for me to go first.
Should have Jan go?
What's the older nigga? Give it
Age
to the
before
older
beauty.
brother. Give it to my big brother, man.
All right.
I'll go. This is pressure.
Yeah, you
So,
glad, I'm
let's
glad
just-
I didn't say what I was originally gonna say.
Say it.
Oh no, this all stuff we gonna have to do afterwards.
Right.
Right?
Oh,
And we
man.
should write this down. Seriously.
Oh, well, it is.
You
on
got to
the
give me
Facebook,
that.
Okay.
you
Oh,
know.
that's
So
We might have to quit having the live feed so that we can like keep this to ourselves.
soon it will be produced and edited, but not for a little while
I
longer.
saw a piece on the Vice channel, and I thought I thought it's true.
Okay.
I,
Jan?
but
Can you read the headline?
So,
again, I
The
know.
cannabis industry has always been rooted in racism. Black chefs are pushing back.
So they're saying that it hasn't been rooted in racism?
No, it's always been rooted in racism, and now you have these group of chefs that are tired of seeing all these other chefs and bakers and confectionery people, so they're fighting back.
Oh, so they're making the product or making. Oh, yeah. Then yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, they could be protesting outside of City Hall too, with their little
Yeah.
hats, chef hats on and stuff. I don't know.
In the shape of joints. Look like dunce caps. We want to cook too.
Right.
Oh my God.
I'm gonna say that's bullshit. One, because there's a twist of words in there. Yeah.
That's a big guy.
The cannabis industry. Is
Yeah.
there a cannabis industry? One.
Yes.
Yeah.
Two, you can cook with cannabis all you want. Though there was a place that was raided recently because it had a bunch of CBD stuff within it. So I'm gonna say that's BS because you can do it if you want. Anybody can cook, with cannabis.
So there shouldn't be a issue with access to it.
All you
Right.
gotta do is get it. Now, when you're
Exactly.
talking about the
Where'd
industry-
you get that stuff you smoking?
Yeah, like and all you
Put it
gotta
in the soup. fool.
Exactly. Not all of it.
Not all of it.
Clarence.
Clarence, come on. Come on now.
My break ain't over yet.
Just to draw a distinction,
We're
it
just
sounds
natural
like
this way.
I hear two things.
Uh-huh.
One is that this story might be bullshit, but the contents, if it is a story, but I'm just saying, is this a real headline? You're saying no way someone wrote this.
No, not like that. No, I'm gonna say it's a fake headline.
Okay. Well, according to Eater, this is a real headline they put out covering chefs in Oregon in a
Bingo.
That's that Vice.
Yeah.
that
so
was
the
the
bakers
episode.
and stuff. I always thought you were talking about George Clinton on Bong Appetit, like because
There-
they were.
There's a couple in Oregon that's kicking
Yes.
ass in
A
the
black
industry.
couple.
Black couple.
Yes.
And they talked about
But what
they
does
have
that
they have a grow up the hill that the husband runs. The wife runs
Yes.
the restaurant. She's the manager. And they talked about their struggle with getting in and other
Right.
folks like them
Right.
being successful. So I had a feeling that might have been it, but the twist in the question, the way you
the
said it,
cannabis industry.
Right.
The cannabis industry, like they had something to do with it. When it's like, well, no,
No.
like.
why aren't you
But
using
if there's a
it? But-
baker's thing going on,
Well-
then or a cook chef's thing going on,
Right.
Right? Because the industry is not even set yet,
Right.
right?
It's still
Cannabis,
evolving.
It's still evolving. So, and the whole thing with the reason why I said, the reason why I was kind of leaning towards it was because of what we faced trying to purchase it, I guess, when it was super illegal.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
but yeah,
Mhm.
I did hear about that couple.
That was a good.
it was a great episode. Yeah.
So we'll put a link to that article in the show notes. It is an interesting article to hear about. Oregon is every state has a different kind of economy for cannabis. There, they just gave anyone a license, kind of you applied for it. So
Yeah.
competition is kind of crazy there. Like there's businesses that are like in the red. And so if you can stand out and produce a good product that's consistent, that's really important in Oregon versus other places are like, hey, there's 3 licenses.
Right.
Like who's going to complain?
Boom.
There's no
Right.
competition.
right.
So it is,
Right.
I think it's a really interesting idea of what happens when you allow just anyone who's interested an opportunity and this, you know, there's natural selection, there's other forces in there, but people get to be creative and try new things. Yeah, so I like the story, but I had issues with the headline too. It's a little kooky.
Yeah, it's a little.
I just got a hankering for Manhattan.
You mean an old fashioned?
Old fashioned.
Oh God, 5
All
and
right.
dime. Wait, we're going to be limited tonight,
So-
guys.
What are you
All
talking
right.
about? We only had what, 3? The last time?
Oh,
I
my
know.
God.
I tripped on the subway.
I know. Jahan said,
That's
Jan,
a-
you're slurring your words.
Really?
That was bad. Yes.
So I can't turn off the substitute teacher. I'm like, come up and slur your words on the board.
But they're so. She makes them so smooth and sweet that it's hard to
It's so
realize
funny because our word of the
dangerous they
day
are.
before that was tinctures, and then we
Right.
went out and had a drink that's basically
Tinctures.
made with what's called bitters, but that's a type of tincture that makes the drink. And so it was kind of like this weird application of what we were learning. We had to do it.
Yeah.
We were.
I mean,
it was all called research.
It's part
Yes.
That's right.
Bingo.
it's part of our
Part of
integrity.
our
I was
research.
new to it, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. You had never tried an old fashioned before.
Yeah.
I've had them in Manhattan.
But
Yeah.
isn't that a really cool place, though?
Yeah.
I love that place. But 2, that's all we're having.
All right,
tonight.
class. All right.
Sorry.
Until
sorry.
we get to finish with the second one, be like, all right, just one more.
I know. I love how you.
You sure you had 2? No, that was my first one.
Well, and then they started the opera singing.
Oh, that was
Was
brilliant.
that
That was brilliant. They were
fantastic?
brilliant.
Why didn't
Yeah.
they show up today? I thought they were going to be singing our news to
Oh,
us.
wait. I don't think our. What did I do with their business cards?
Well,
yeah. Okay.
here
we'll
they
talk-
are.
Sorry.
Little
So-
short one. I was like, goodness gracious. The
She was
voice
a
just
feisty
filled-
one.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I want to get them in here to start like singing, you know, cannabis advice and like, you know, just all sorts of things. I think if like, you know, like a little bit of levity here. Imagine if they were singing these headlines and we had
Oh
to
my
guess
God.
whether or not they were
Oh my
finding
God.
or fiction. So
Wait.
look forward to that in coming episodes. We're talking
So
to
are you saying
Yeah,
that
these-
we,
and
these
we have
people
to
are-
stay at the place tonight till they show up?
That's a
So then
segment.
These
we can
people
do-
are
Or find them.
amazing opera singers. Like they
Yeah.
like,
and they show up.
and to
at
see
this
it
one
live
place.
is really
Is-
amazing.
right?
New Hemp
Like,
Times, classing up the joint.
That's right. That's how we roll, baby.
All right.
Drinking
Curtis.
lemonade out of a plastic cup.
Mhm. So as you guys know, the cannabis industry is full of these small acquisitions. A lot of them are, you know, they run the gamut in size. But is this one a real headline coming out of California? Cresco Labs bets big on California with $1.1 billion Origin House acquisition. Origin House being a cannabis company. Most cannabis companies, as you know, are fledgling in California right now. They're struggling with the regulations seeming to change every 20 minutes.
Yep.
And there's like even MedMen is going under now, it looks like, in California. They're
What?
struggling.
Really?
I mean, they're probably going to be fine, but probably not. I don't know.
well, you know
But
what?
is
Can I just-
Cresco Labs betting big on California? $1.1 million acquisition. Is this something I just made up to sound cool,
Do you know
or is it
I am going to
possible?
call bullshit on this one. 1.1 million. You know what that is? That's 1,100,000. That ain't no money for a startup on some marijuana,
$1.1
right?
billion?
Oh, you said 1.1
Yeah,
billion?
billion.
Oh, that's 1,100,000,000. My
changed.
bad.
Yeah, that
Oops. Yeah, I'm gonna say now.
You don't think so? This is
Wait,
again
who is
Cresco.
Cresco.
Yeah.
So
we
they're
know
big in the Midwest. They've opened up labs. They've
Oh.
opened up manufacturing facilities.
Right.
They're one of those groups going around buying companies. But the average, Jan, what's the size of the average buyout? You had a number for me the other day. You're saying it's between like 250,000 and something
for
else.
buyout.
Buyout.
For
Buying companies. People are going around buying and
I
investing in
I
companies.
think you're talking about another Jan. I don't
Oh.
know.
There's
that
no recall
conversation
at
all.
At all.
I
It's
really
okay.
don't.
That was meant. That was he was talking.
That was
he
a
was
hint.
talking to Manhattan Jan.
No,
Old fashioned.
Oh,
No.
old-fashioned Jan.
what you guys just saw is she is
I
an
want to say old.
Wait. He's
No.
gonna
No, I'm
do
gonna
it.
just say she's an expert at the non-disclosure agreement. So whenever we talk
Right.
about business, she's
I
like,
know.
I don't remember.
Well,
It's like,
no,
oh,
no,
that's
no.
Remember, we're
I'm
not
just
supposed to-
saying that I don't, because yeah. I'm shutting
What
up
else?
right
So
now.
Jan, since you're so
I can't talk
talkative, you're
because
gonna.
we have
I'm passing the
NDAs.
ball to you. Is this a real headline? $1.1 billion acquisition, betting big in California.
I will say yes.
And who did they buy?
They bought a company called Origin House. Which-
Yes.
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 It's anything is possible in cannabis.
Anything is possible with Cresco Labs.
That's where I was going.
I'm gonna say no.
I'll say true.
So this as surprising as it is a true headline according to New Cannabis Ventures. Their website did a story. There was a big back and forth with this company and Cresco Labs, and the amount just kept getting higher. It was in the millions, and and eventually, apparently, it closed at $1.1 billion.
Damn. And what is it? Cresco? What is it?
Cresco Labs. And I've had the pleasure of talking with some of these people. Even I was going to do a talk at one of their facilities, I think in Michigan or Illinois.
They're in
Illinois.
Chicago.
Are
They're out of
they on a
Chicago.
medical marijuana
Yeah,
thing?
yeah.
Aha, okay.
And so,
And how big was the company they bought?
I'm not sure. I'm guessing they bought a unicorn. I don't know. I mean, it sounds too good to be true. Because, you know, think about how long there's been legal adult sales in California. How could anyone have that projection? But again, maybe it's not about that. Maybe it's a strategic move.
Jahan,
Another
can I
way.
ask you,
sorry.
can I ask a question? The Mad Men piece. What's going on with Mad Men in
Oh, we'll get to
California?
that.
Oh, okay. Because I wanted to talk
Spoiler
about
alert.
that. Okay. I'll shut up. Because I
No.
wanted to talk about
All right.
them.
So
The TV show?
No. Or
the
Mad Men.
Mad Men.
I
Oh,
called
Mad
it Mad
Men.
Men.
Yeah.
I called it Mad Men.
Well,
I know
there-
what you're talking about.
Yeah.
All right.
Advertising firm?
From the 50s with Don Draper?
Madman. Madman. Crazy motherfucker.
Yeah. So,
Clarence.
all right. This next headline: with no explanation, California regulators delay marijuana social equity funding. So we talk about this every week. Seems to be in the news every day about social equity issues in cannabis. With no explanation, California regulators delay marijuana social equity funding. Is this a real headline? Is this something that was found? Is this a finding, or is this just a fiction? I wrote last night to trip you guys up.
Fiction.
Why do you think that, Randy? California, no explanation. Regulators delay marijuana social equity funding.
I think it would make a lot of noise. I haven't heard it yet. I'm not saying I'm up on everything, but
You don't even have a TV.
that's true. I can read though.
Oh my God.
Um,
I love the expression on your face whenever you do these characters.
Oh, you just wait.
I'm waiting.
So tell us more
Yeah,
about your
yeah,
readings.
yeah.
So why? So do you think the headline? Do you think the story is completely false? There's nothing there.
I just have a feeling in this climate right now that would make more noise. And
You mean like it would be something like, hey, everybody, look at this.
Yep.
Like,
Yeah. And in
something
California,
consorted
too,
like
you know.
so.
but see, aren't they kind of who is it? Oregon and California, right? Colorado are probably like the leaders in this right now in
Yep.
this whole
Yep.
marijuana thing.
Yep.
Ah.
So yeah, a lot of these state programs are saying are creating these funding programs for people to apply to.
Yep.
And would California, one of the biggest players in the game, just suddenly cancel it without explanation?
Maybe because they haven't gotten the
Funding.
funding yet, or they're checking up. They're trying to figure out what's coming in for the next.
So I
fiscal
think
year,
we're in agreement. This, whether or not the headline's true or not, this is a story. This is a story, but the headline might be true, might be fiction.
It's a finding.
It's a finding.
Fiction.
With no explanation, California regulators delay social equity funding. Well, according to Marijuana Business Daily, California regulators put $10 million into a state grant, but put the program on hold. And Saturday, at a news release, the Bureau of Cannabis Control said it was canceling the application period effective immediately after slating June 30th as a deadline for doling out the grant money after people had been submitting grants. So it is surprising that this isn't more news. So
when
they're going
did that happen?
very recently, just actually on April Fool's Day. So maybe that's why people.
Or was it an April Fool's joke?
I don't think so, because they have not set a new deadline for the thing. There's been no update. So originally June 30th, they're going to announce where the funding's going. Now there's no timeline. There's no update.
Now this program allowed certain segment of population to apply for
a grant for their cannabis business. Yeah.
And they had already done it already. So they're sitting there waiting.
So there were applications already under review.
And they put it on hold?
It was supposed to be June 30th was supposed to be the announcement, and then effective immediately said we got to start over, do it over.
What do you think that may be because of the massive influx of people trying to get money? Like
I always say, look at these names on the applications.
And maybe there was a little
Tyreek
bit of,
Bivens.
what? Shamik Jeans.
Yeah, applying for we're moving too damn fast. You know, I don't know, you know.
So yeah, so very
Okay.
surprising there. So there are some weird.
Yep.
With cannabis, you always can expect the unexpected. All right. So moving on, that was great, guys. I think this is an issue that's not going away. I'm certainly interested to see.
Too much money to be made. They're
Yeah.
trying to figure out how they can get their cut. That's what the American government is going through, I think. And then you also got these people who are just like, it's against the law. Okay, well then you don't do it, dummy.
Right, dummy. I don't want to see you stoned anyway.
Exactly. And don't prevent anybody else from wanting to get high. How about that?
How about that?
How about you don't push your
How
thought
about that?
process on something?
Yeah. How about that?
Yeah.
How about that?
All right. Well, moving across the country to Florida.
Uh-oh.
Is this a finding or is this a fiction? Are we going to bust this open or are we going to embrace this? Is this headline true or not? Florida's largest medical marijuana operator gets more dispensaries after reaching deal with the state. Florida's largest medical marijuana operator gets more dispensaries after reaching deal with the state.
I'm going to show you where we keep the gators at, boy.
Oh my God.
I'm going to say that's bullshit because I believe Florida is a backwards ass state when it comes to stuff like that. You see how they vote every year. I don't give them credit to be that smart. I don't see it.
You're offending our Florida listeners.
I'm not talking about the Florida listeners. I'm talking about the people who legislate that state. That's what I'm talking about.
Yes.
I'm not talking about the people because the people of Florida are smoking hot sexy. I know a few of them.
Your daddy lives in Florida.
That's true too.
Is he smoking hot sexy?
Is that boy, huh? God damn it. Say, Junior.
Junior.
I think it's true.
I think it's true.
Why do you guys think it's true?
Well,
It's a good old boy network.
But I mean,
but there's a company down there
And that's where
that
Yep.
is reputable that we know about.
Yep.
We know about specifically
Yes.
that they
But
have a
I'm just-
large footprint and they're good guys. They're on the good side.
I'm
just
thinking
maybe-
about the people who legislate law and that's what I'm thinking about.
They
I
do
don't-
have a program.
Do they? And
Yeah.
well, isn't it government regulated or isn't it for something in specific? Like
they
Well,
just
I can't-
allowed smoking now. They just repealed the ban like last week
Really?
on that product.
aha.
Yeah.
All right.
Remember our guys in Miami.
Well, that's okay. All right. Well, I
That
don't
Miami
know.
is
Let's
in
see.
Florida, Greer.
I know Miami's in Florida.
I
So-
wasn't talking about that Miami.
So in Florida,
I wasn't thinking about that part of Florida, but
So in Florida, if you get a license, you can legally open 25 dispensaries. And an appeals court dropped this and is giving them the ability to open up 49, possibly more dispensaries.
Wow.
Only legally allowed to open 25. They got it through. We'll be opening. Now they can do 49 dispensaries,
in the whole state of Florida.
Wow.
possibly more.
Hey, Dad, you hear that?
So that is true.
Wait,
text you right now.
What's the name of the company?
Well, they're not a sponsor of the
Jimmy
show.
Smokes Back.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
What did you call it?
Jimmy
I knew my
Smoke
father's
Shack.
name.
Oh.
Funny
God, Greer.
If I had a friend who worked for them, I would plug them, but I don't know if I do or not.
he is not going to it tonight.
We're not giving them free
Knock on my
advertising.
door.
I want them to give us a tour of all 49 dispensaries. I mean, that must be a nightmare for the health department. Like, imagine, it must be hard already. Every licensee there gets 25 dispensaries. And, like, you have these inspectors assigned. He's like, I don't want that job. They're like, everyone else gets 25. I got to go visit 49 and do these checklists. Like,
Are they going to be like, so just saying they're going to be spread throughout the entire state of Florida?
they just opened their first drive-through
I
one
bet
last
it's
week,
our
too.
guys.
But where though? Like, is it in Panama City, Florida, or
Not
is
all-
it in,
not all
in
49 of them.
Tallahassee? Like,
I
I
mean-
mean, where would they be? Like, I
It's
mean,
in
imagine that. You have to go from up here
Pensacola.
to, like down. Like,
Yeah.
are they all in one county?
No. They'll be spread out.
Have
And
you
some
noticed-
counties will ban
I don't know.
dispensaries.
I don't know.
It's the hot side of the room.
It is. This is
This
the
where the
hot
funny
side
at.
of the room.
We need a sponsor by raise your hands if you're sure.
I'm wearing freaking secret, and it's not
Really?
a secret over here.
Hey,
All right.
Secret.
Sorry.
So we've talked about some crazy things happening. This next one is pretty crazy too.
All right.
3 states introduced legislation to legalize small amounts of all drugs. Is our country about to take a Portugal approach to drug regulation? Now, introducing legislation does not mean much. Shit gets turned over. But to legalize small amounts of all drugs, is this a finding, or is this wishful thinking that we'll adopt a more responsible model that will knock out the black market, create treatment possibilities?
That would knock out the black market, but they can barely figure out how to fix these people with the opioid problem.
I know,
so
but I wouldn't be right.
Why would they? Especially, I'd like to know what those 3 states are. For one,
Ohio, they probably got
there is no way
a junkie in Congress. Just legal, you know. I want to legalize everything.
How much is in my pockets? That's how much should be legal.
Right, exactly. It's just a pocket.
well, you got 4 pockets, right?
Oh my God.
So
What's his name?
did states really introduce legislation to legalize small amounts of all drugs?
No.
Is this a headline or is this fiction?
Fiction.
Fiction.
That is ficciones.
It is indeed fiction, but there's a totally made up headline that was based actually on an interview I saw with a cannabis expert, Mike Lazuski, and he believes that the United States are poised to make a move like this, and some states may in the future do something like that. But again, this was not a headline. I just heard about it in an interview that, you know, and it might be like we're in the 1970s now with where cannabis legalization is now with something like this.
The first 2 states to do it should be North and South Dakota.
Why? Because they need people to move there?
Yeah, ain't nobody there. How many delegates do they have? What's the?
That's a great way to get people to immigrate to your
what's
state,
that?
to
What
move
am I
to your
thinking
state.
of? The,
junkies going there.
what am I thinking of? Jesus Christ, I can't think of it right now.
You sounded like
Damn, what's that? Electoral college votes. How many do they have?
Like how many?
Yeah, there's each one of the North and South Dakota have, because
Like
I think there's
half
like
each.
a million. There's like a million people between both those states or something.
Probably like
Really?
5 or 7 or something like that.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
We
Someone
should get
tells
like
us.
a social studies student. They'd know all this stuff.
I know. I'm too lazy to check it out on Google.
When they give black people their reparations, we're gonna take some of that land.
All right.
Oh my God.
All right, I want to test your knowledge now about the cost of medical cannabis with this next headline. So, Ohio medical marijuana continues to cost over $450 an ounce. Is this headline a finding or is it fiction? Ohio medical marijuana continues to cost over $450 an ounce. Now, we've seen in some states prices drop, some states prices go up. Ohio's had their program for a minute. How much is the cannabis costing there? Remember,
How much is an ounce on the black market? You know,
we could probably, according to the DEA's website, which it ranges between $200 and $400. So according to official sources.
you know where they get it from.
But in Oregon and Colorado, you see it much cheaper. But then again, we're talking about places that those places have adult use and medical, so market's a little different. But Ohio,
all right.
Does it continue to cost $450 an ounce there?
I'm gonna say false. I'm gonna say because the average patient isn't purchasing an ounce. I believe they would be. The doctor would prescribe them a smaller amount, perhaps, and they wouldn't. That sounds like something recreational. I think they're given, you know.
And if it was being administered by, I'm assuming these health whatever folk, wouldn't it be in those tin cans already pre-rolled? But does that
I mean, it could be
equate or come up, or is that an ounce?
No. The stuff from the federal government that's about a pound of joints that they receive through that program from the 70s. I think there's only 3 people who still are alive that get it. But yeah, it's a fair amount of cannabis.
I'm just looking at the size that I've seen people with.
Jan, you're on your computer. I think you're cheating.
No, I'm not.
Chan,
I'm
God,
not.
tag on it. You cheating?
Now you're on the
No,
spot.
I'm trying to engage people, hear people.
Is there something you'd like to share with the rest of the class?
I
She
am
is
trying.
not cheating.
I am not
Jan,
cheating.
All right.
I don't
So,
cheat. I
Jan, the ball's
did
in your
once.
court. Ohio medical marijuana continues to
Yes.
cost over $450 an ounce. That is a real headline.
Yep. Doesn't surprise me.
Well,
We have a
Sad.
no.
Guess
no
we
from
know
Randy.
where to go, huh?
Yes. So we're tied 50-50. You could be the tiebreaker, Greer.
What? Oof.
Oh, I
Is-
thought you were saying it was true.
Oh, you
I
didn't
was
give the answer.
confused.
No, I said it
That's
was.
what I thought
said
it-
it was not.
So it's a fiction. It's
Fiction.
totally fictional.
I'm gonna go with it's fake.
So Ohio medical marijuana continues to cost over $450 an ounce. Well, get out your life savings. It's not covered by insurance. This is a true story from Ohio.
Wow.
Yep.
Go
Yep. Yep.
So so we hear a lot. I think a lot of this data is interesting, and I think it'd be a great study to kind of do this, what's called medical geography, look at how much it costs, and why people are using it, and these other factors that may explain the market.
Hold on a second.
I know
That
you're
would
going to say
actually
just
be-
where I'm going.
Like where are you purchasing this
Thank
at?
you.
Like
You
The
go to
dispensary.
The dispensary.
the dispensary
the state,
for
yeah.
medical, you know.
Yeah.
But you go to Cleveland on Jackson Street, you know, you get it. I'm sure it's not going to be 400. Not that anybody would, you know, go there, but
I would.
Clarence would.
Well,
Clarence
let's use an
owns it.
analogy. And would you buy a hamburger from Clarence off the street or in the restaurant? Like, hey, I got this burger.
They have Denton hamburger. Oh my
there's
God.
one bite in it.
So, you know, getting it through a dispensary has its pluses, right? It's been tested. It's following some sort of thing. There's hygienic practices. The dispensary is probably at least as clean as the Subway sandwiches when you're going in there and they're handling your food. So, I mean, you are paying that extra cost, but it is still shocking at this time when it's regulated and production is standardized to see these prices. I think these prices over time will drop, but I think.
But don't you think it's
Wow.
also potentially
Interesting.
because of the regulations?
I think the
Because of-
early phase,
Yeah.
to get back money on
Mhm.
that
investing
they've
things. And
invested.
people have
and
been posting
testing
the
and stuff
cost
like
of
that.
products in Canada online. It's caused it's a nightmare for some companies because they have these little products, little bottles of THC, CBD oil, and they're hundreds of dollars, like several $100s.
And is it actual CBD oil?
Mhm. It's like clinical, like it's like this meets the standards similar to what you would expect from a real medicine. Like medicines are a certain guarantee that it's free of certain things. It matches the label to a certain degree. Will perform as advertised. But yeah,
There's taxes on the products that are bumping it up. So it needs to be a tea revolt.
You got
Boston.
a Boston CBD party?
Yeah.
All right.
Well, we can do it since Amanda is in Boston. Our listener Amanda
Yep.
that we love so
We
much.
got a job for you.
Yeah, set it off.
Set it off, sis.
Come on, Amanda.
Yeah.
So we bring up, we're talking about regulations and taxes. And as you know, moving on to our next headline, a lot of programs come from volunteers coming together, creating up consensus standards. This is what I did for years to help create the product standards, operational standards for programs. But is this headline a finding or is it fiction? Michigan seeks more volunteers for adult use marijuana rules work groups. And so these marijuana rules work groups are where people can show up and help reach a consensus about the standards and regulations. So Michigan seeks more volunteers for their adult use marijuana works group. Is this an opportunity for people to participate, or am I giving you false hopes that you can change your state cannabis program?
False hopes.
False hopes. No hesitation. Please raise your hand.
You said the state of Michigan, right?
Yeah, Michigan seeks
Some
more
cats in
volunteers.
Detroit.
Excuse me.
I don't know, man. How they water situation?
Not too good.
Okay.
I wouldn't drink it.
Yeah, I wouldn't smoke nothing either. I mean, stop.
Okay, no, that's real. Yeah,
I don't think they're
fiction.
that forward thinking. I'm sorry, they can't even get their water situation in order.
You need some water. That's all right.
I know. Sorry
So,
about
Jan,
that. Yes.
is Michigan seeking more volunteers for their adult use marijuana rules working group? Is this
Yes,
a headline?
They are.
Why do you think so?
Because she got inside information.
I'm not saying a
I had a
word.
silly
Just because I think so.
Okay,
Brilliant.
all right, you choose the two. Is
Yes,
Michigan
Ren.
seeking more volunteers, Randy, for their adult use marijuana rules working group?
He turned it off.
I say no because Legislation is in place already. I'm just looking at the process at which you would go about changing a law that's been in place for.
No, it's a good.
I'm on the Well, I
You are?
No, she works for another state.
I did.
Yeah,
I work for another state.
Well,
on
Delaware is a little.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Sorry.
And their advisory.
Oh,
thing.
really?
Yeah. Yeah. So they're always looking for people to look at the regulations and the laws. And
Well, that
stuff like
kills
that.
my logic. So I think I'm
Now wait a second.
my answer.
But I don't know what the
No,
hell.
you're
There's
right.
no
You're
real
right,
right or
Jan.
wrong answer because
Did
this
you make it up?
It's a finding.
This is a finding. According to Marijuana Business Daily, Michigan is seeking more volunteers. Now, these are unique opportunities. Usually these come by really quick, and you got to sign up, and you can get kicked off if you don't show up for meetings.
Right.
I mean, I've been on a lot of these different working groups. Some of them are a huge waste of time. Other ones are really great and produce something. But this is a chance, like if you have an idea or if you already have a set of standards or you represent another group, you can come together, reach a consensus. Because again, the problem like we see in New York and New Jersey is they're like, we're just going to make up anything we want. We'll spell marijuana with an H. Like we're not going to look at what works in other states. Like they set arbitrary limits like in New Jersey for if you have, a certain amount of THC and you get pulled over, automatic DUI. But that didn't come from anywhere, right?
No,
Right,
yeah.
right.
See, that's just another way the state trying to rip people off, man.
So this is a real story, according to Marijuana Business Daily. If you live in Michigan or you want to travel there, commute, they are looking for more volunteers to develop their adult use program.
Okay,
Right.
adult use. So I'm assuming, right? We get there, we get the smoke. Is there any smoking involved?
You mean I drove 14 hours and can't get a joint?
There ain't no smoke.
You'd be surprised how often that comes up in these working
I
groups.
bet.
Well, why would I want to do some shit like that?
Because you want to like give some time to your community. But it's
Because you
becoming
care.
a very interesting. The reason I include this headline was because now we have a lot more lobbying going on in cannabis, and a lot more companies are able to be like, we don't want home cultivation, or we want home cultivation, or we want to
Home
have
cultivation meaning what? Like I can't build it in my own place.
you can't grow 4
Grow
plants
in
or
my-
whatever.
Yeah, well, see, those
Also,
people
like
should go shit their pants.
some people, and unless more benign things are like some groups are lobbying for there to be delivery services, others are saying no way, we want people coming to the dispensary. So if you don't like what's going on in another state or you think something's better for your program, go to Michigan and volunteer for these rules working groups. It's a great opportunity to meet people and learn kind of like if you want to see how the hemp sausage is made. Like, yeah, it's.
Is there really hemp sausage?
Oh yeah.
It is now.
I had some in the Czech Republic.
Product of the day, dude.
Yeah.
We're getting rich off of us out there.
Gotta tune in. These kids are smart.
All right. So this next headline's a little scary,
Uh-oh.
and I want to know if it's a real headline or if it's not. So California cannabis legally allowed to be sold if it's 25% of it is covered in mold. California cannabis legally allowed to be sold if 25% of it is covered in mold.
Nah, not that.
Nope.
Can't that mold cause a problem, dude? I don't.
There's mold everywhere. There's mold on
There's
an
mold
apple I
everywhere,
ate.
I know.
That,
So I'll give you guys two outs. One, is this just a true fact, or is it a headline? So do you think it's a headline that's been passed around, but is it true in and of itself? Those are two questions, right? To think about, to kind of bust this out, right?
All right, it's a headline.
Do you think it's a real regulation?
No, it's not a real regulation, but it's a headline.
Okay.
Not to mention, I think this product is moving so fast that it doesn't have time to mold. I'm going to say that's a BS headline.
Okay. So products are flying off the shelf. There's no chance it could be covered. Jan, you have some experience in regulatory stuff and product safety. Do you think a state would pass a standard which would...
No. Nope.
That's how we got penicillin,
and
right?
Especially not
From mold?
California. Why? What do you think?
Well, according to bcca.ca.gov, the Bureau of Cannabis Control, the Cannabis Order of Adoption.pdf, Section 572E2 2. This is true. If you break down the numbers, total yeast and mold counts basically equate to 25% of the product. This rule will probably change. I'm surprised it's not a headline.
I can't believe that.
So let me just take you back in the memory. I didn't want to skew what I was saying. Go back to some of the West Indian stores that you used to, and if you remember, that was that ammonia smell. That's post mold, after mold attacks that thing. They, you know.
So and that's probably why my head hurt all the time. I'm kidding.
But again, this is probably not visible mold. Right. It's other types of mildew and things. And it could not necessarily be the type that would be pathogenic. So it's probably not, you know, there's lots of mold and stuff. They probably were like, no aspergillus, no this, but there are other ones. And this is where it gets a little weird with states, is there are standards for products like this, herbal products, agricultural products. Why is each state making up their own? And I just think it's a simple thing. And I know I have the science background, but I think our elected officials have trouble with math. They put out these standards like, that sounds good. Like this is a good, those numbers look nice and round.
And they don't understand what that actually means and how that impacts.
Not to mention, I think the stuff that when we went to those places, I wouldn't be a bit surprised if that stuff was smuggled in.
Wait, Jahan, can I ask a question though? I mean, couldn't that
smell like ammonia?
So
well, hold on. I have a question. So my question is to you: is there a possibility that the industry was lobbying politicians to make that happen?
I think it would be. It depends. I think there is no question that there is lobbying going on.
Yeah.
Whether or not they intentionally knew what they were lobbying for or what standards would adopt, you know, there is a process where people negotiate, our elected officials, over these things that govern our lives. Like you might say, hey, this is a good standard, and then they get into a debate saying like, well, I'm not going to give you this unless you add an extra 0 here, like to this value, you know, and like, oh, you got to put a cap on the THC, you can't have products higher than this, and then you can grow at home. Or like people, that's what happens. Sometimes it's once the lobbying guys say, this is what we want, these are the standards we'd like to see, then it goes into the hemp sausage machine, and things get lost in translation. And so I'm just saying, like, this happened in Massachusetts. They put a limit for heavy metals that was so low for cannabis. No other product or thing on the planet had such a low heavy metals count. It was like they didn't even have scientific instruments that could detect things reliably that low. I mean, it was in the parts per several billion. It's like you're not going to find anything on the planet that doesn't have a little bit of lead or mercury in it at this point, like tuna fish or anything. There's all these trace amounts of things and everything that aren't necessarily bad for you, or at least I hope not. But so, you know, there's this thing where we really have to be clear in the future about masks. And that's why I kind of put in that thing about Michigan seeking volunteers, is we should really ask questions about, do these numbers make sense? What does it mean in reality?
Right. Wow.
So there you go. Be careful what you're inhaling out there. So our next, I know I already brought up Marvel, so maybe this is a tell, but is Captain America a stoner? Chris, is this headline true or not? Chris Evans used to love smoking weed, but is now taking a break because it, quote, gets in my way. That's why he grew that beard in Infinity War. So Chris Evans used to love smoking weed, but recently he said he's taking a break because it gets in his way. Is this a national headline? Is this something put out there?
I don't know. I follow him on Twitter, and he's so like down to earth in what he says and what he stands up for and speaks out against. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if this was true.
Maybe they're drug testing for Endgame, and he's like, I need to keep this roll.
Nah, he's throwing the shield the wrong way. He's throwing it too slow.
God, what the hell?
Yeah, he's a real dude. Like he's up on a lot of stuff. So I wouldn't be a bit surprised if that was true. Yeah. I wouldn't. If it's not true, you're really good.
And I would actually say it's true too. It sounds like a really good thing, and good if it is true. Good for him for having that insight if it was getting in his way of accomplishing.
So Randy, you're going last, and I'm gonna trip you up a little bit because I found an interview from 2011 with Evans when he reacted with shock to an interviewer who had never done drugs, and he said, quote, "Really? You're missing out, dude. Let's smoke some weed, bro."
He actually said that
in a 2011 interview.
So
but
that
this
is true.
that part is true, but is it true that he used to love it but is taking a break? Is this
I'll say it's true. He's an actor, actors in LA, so and I'll say it's true.
I don't know. I've never lived in LA and was an actor in LA. Anybody else in this room?
I lived in LA. I wish an actor out there.
I know.
They all smoke.
So
I'll take
good
the fifth.
stuff.
I'll plead the fifth.
So I guess they're gonna, like in the Spider-Man Homecoming, they showed those videos, right, of Captain America, like you're going through puberty, so you have detention. So all these like PSA Captain America videos, and so like he's a war criminal and a former cannabis user, because now Chris Evans, this is absolutely true headline from People magazine. While in the past he'd been very open about it, he's now taking a break.
Good for
it's
him.
a true story. It's very interesting, and I think we should support people who go through this, because I remember when I was a cannabis patient and I chose to stop using cannabis for a significantly long period of time so that I could do research and pass drug tests and work in these highly regulated areas, because they didn't have people at the time who wanted to do the research and have that scrutiny and all that stuff. And I got very little support from my friends who worked at dispensaries. They're like, you should fight that, and blah, blah. I was like,
doesn't that stuff? But here's the kicker, though. Doesn't it stay in your system? Sorry, Jen. Doesn't it stay in your system for like a pretty long time?
Yeah, like you're looking at a couple weeks. Yeah.
So like
did
28 days. But I have to tell you, I think that's wonderful, because I think all of us need to pay attention to everything we do, whether it's the food we eat, the people we hang around. Right. It's mindfulness. It's paying attention to, is this helping me, hurting me? Is this,
it would be even more helpful if he provided a little bit more detail on what does it mean when he says get in the way.
Right.
Because for people who, partook like he did, they need a little bit of detail to recognize what is
might be happening. And
exactly.
that might be
so
a good thing.
He said in non-specific terms about it, about it making him feeling a little more lazy.
He doesn't follow me.
His work ethic as an actor.
But you know what?
That's what I'm thinking. Like that. Like the
businessman.
When he was doing Oklahoma, it wasn't a problem. But now that he's like Captain America, maybe it's cut.
Everybody smokes in Oklahoma.
But I have to say that I think this goes back to responsible usage and paying attention to yourself, and we need that in all areas of our life. You know what I mean?
That's life.
And so I think that's beautiful, and I think we really should. This is the one thing that gets me sometimes about the cannabis industry, because we talk about cannabis and I love cannabis myself, but at the same time, we do have to recognize that anything can be abused. And so I think the more honest we are about this, we're actually empowering patients or users to kind of take care of themselves and their lives. And so for me, I love that he had that insight. And Randy, I agree. It would be, it's great. I wish he could kind of talk about that, because we all learn from each other, right?
Yeah.
I know there are times like when my father passed away, I didn't drink for a long time because I knew that I was sad, and the last thing I needed to do was to drink when I was sad, because I didn't want it to turn into anything.
But it's a depressant,
and you just
right?
have to, and you just really kind of have to pay attention to things that you do, and I love that insight.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. So no, that's great. That's perfect.
Right on.
So to change gears a little bit, everyone's excited about careers and getting contracts in the cannabis industry. The DEA recently posted a job. This is true, absolutely true, looking for a contractor who could burn 1,000 pounds of cannabis an hour from all the stuff they've confiscated. They apparently have too much. They don't know what to do with it. So is this a real national headline or not? The DEA wants you to stop calling them about getting paid to burn marijuana.
Yeah, that's a real headline. I'll burn it for you, DEA. Word up, yo. I got a whole clique of dudes. We come up, yo, we burn all that shit.
But 1,000 pounds an hour? Could you do it?
Yo, we can get how many pounds you got, yo?
You could just throw
1,000 pounds an hour?
Good Lord.
Come on, yo.
Throw a party and invite people over. They'll just love to stand around.
So remember, this is all the cannabis that they have to store for court cases and like roll it in, be like, here's the evidence, judge. Because there's been times in the past where police have confiscated large amounts of cannabis and then burned it because it was a fire hazard. And the judge's like, where's the evidence? And they're like, we burned it. So they have to store this stuff somewhere. And then after a certain number of time, they have to get rid of it.
Right.
So, they're catching, I don't know, submarines, trucks, drop packages filled with cannabis. They really did put out a job. So if you go to the DA's website, you can find all these contracting jobs that you can get with them to do various things with them. Like they contract for their opium and coca production and their cannabis production. Like that's all DEA contracts to meet their quotas for research and things like that. But then they also have people who destroy the drugs they confiscate. But did they really put out a thing about please stop calling us about getting paid to burn marijuana? Was the response just so overwhelming that they put it out? You said it's fact.
I wouldn't doubt it. I'm saying it's fact, but then again, now that I think about it, I'm figuring, the DEA, how y'all gonna pay for y'all shit, dogs, when you got to put that back on the streets. You know what I mean? And that's like that Iran Contra shit. You feel me?
Oh my God. No, I think it's true. I think it's true.
I've seen them do it. I cried.
I cried.
Usually they mix like hair clippings with it, so it's not too appealing. But...
Is that right?
You can't smoke it.
Meanwhile, the town over got high as fuck.
I say it's true.
This is a true story. Marijuana Moment. Release
We're
this.
Doing well today, aren't we?
Be average.
Be average.
Hey.
All right.
That's good. Good. All right. So, Jahan, any other ones?
Oh, I got a lot of them.
Oh, jeez.
We haven't gotten to the science yet. There's been so much weird stuff that's been happening. I'm just trying to figure out where I'll go next with this one. Okay, all right. We're gonna stick with the federal agencies. We'll do a little theme next couple ones.
The feds.
The EPA is funding research on using hemp as a sustainable alternative to concrete. The EPA is funding research on using hemp as a sustainable alternative to concrete. Is this a finding? Is this going to change what our homes in Brooklyn and Bushwick are made of someday? Or is this going to just be one of those things I made up out of wishful thinking?
The Environmental Protection Agency?
It's putting money out there so that people can figure out how to make hemp concrete better, more effective, commercialize
Wait, hold on. You said how to make it.
Well, it's a research, right? They're funding research on using hemp as an alternative to concrete.
As an alternative.
Mm-hmm. Are we building false hopes here?
That's the
The concrete industry must be losing their mind if this is happening
anymore.
I'm gonna say that's a fact.
I would say yes as well.
But then again, man, it's the EPA, dogs. Like,
I know it's.
And that dude who's the head of the EPA is a complete schmuck. But that doesn't mean he's the one who gets to sign off on it.
He's probably been on vacation for the last 3 months. He has no idea what it's going to come back to. Like, what grant program did you just start? Like, yeah. So the EPA is funding research on using hemp as a sustainable alternative to concrete. So if you have access to hemp, you have some ideas, can you apply for a grant to the EPA? Is this a real headline? Like, we all know you can make hemp concrete.
It's a finding.
It's a finding.
We all know what?
Well, you can, use hemp to make textiles. It's, it's
the shit is just as strong as steel, ain't it?
Right, but
is a federal agency offering funding.
But then that's that EPA. That's the shit. The Environmental Protection Agency. These guys don't give a shit about the environment. The guys who are governing it now, like
they're the ones who don't believe in global warming. God, I can't even speak it.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that's real.
I'm saying it's true.
I'm gonna say it's real as well.
This is indeed a true funding opportunity from the Environmental Protection Agency.
It's probably like a concrete company by Trump or something.
All right, good job. So
I
know we hear a lot of weird things about marijuana. That's why it's good to cannabust some of these things open. So our next federal agency is the IRS. The IRS is now allowing you to deduct marijuana vaporizers as medical expenses. You can get it reimbursed by insurance or other things like that. The IRS is going to allow you to deduct marijuana vaporizers as medical expenses.
I'm going to say no.
No.
If you have a pre-existing condition.
Yeah, but I mean, you're going to spend, what is a volcano, like $800, $700 is for a volcano? Damn, it might be, oh my.
It would be nice if they would, but
why'd you have to throw in pre-existing conditions? Now that you teaming up with him,
Like the guy with the nose.
God.
Wow.
Right.
I mean, it's a medical.
It is a medical thing, but
I think
a
it's
federal...
true because I see those people with the oxygen tanks. They get oxygen treatment. So I was thinking maybe if they have.
Do you think they get a write-off for those tanks they're carrying around?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's not considered controversial. This is a federal agency.
That's the one part that's what screws me
Check
up
with
on
the
it.
essence of life.
You guys, how are you feeling about that?
Oh, we're waiting for
I'm
Randy.
gonna call bullshit.
Randy, what is yours?
True.
I'm up at bat.
I'm saying.
So loaded, bottom of the ninth, 2 outs.
While it is true that 1 or 2 people have managed to get their insurance companies to cover their inhalation devices, their vaporizers, the IRS in no way allows you to deduct anything related to that. So this was completely
right.
Man, that scared me. Oh my god!
I just hit a grand slam, you know.
There you
Sorry.
go.
I'm
It's
sorry,
like
I
if
didn't mean to
they're
start with
fireworks.
I thought somebody got smacked.
I know. I'm the one sitting over here. I'm like, what the hell just happened?
Sorry.
Right off my
So, all right.
Wait,
well,
so what is it?
it's completely made up.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
So
because it's a-
EPA, DEA, they're getting in on the game,
That's what.
but IRS, that was completely made up. And if you, so
one day we can only hope. One day.
so
Well, we'd have to get the whole
It would have to be
healthcare
legal.
system in order first
so
before
that
that to
won't
happen.
I'd like to be the guy that is an auditor for the IRS that goes around. Where's your volcano?
Did you do it? Did you know that
Show
you
me.
can write that off?
Plug it in and see if it works.
You know what? I'll do you. You can write that bong off too.
Right.
Oh my God, y'all are nuts. Y'all are nuts.
Hey,
Oh,
hemp
All right.
nuts.
oh we are
Hemp
just
nuts.
nuts.
All right.
Put some respect on my name.
What does a hemp nut look like?
well, I wanted to say hemp
Nuts.
seeds, but it doesn't sound as exciting.
That little
Right,
I
that's
love. Do you
They need
guys
to
like
sell
our
in the Yankee
logo?
The
Stadium.
logo's
Wait,
awesome.
you
Hemp nuts.
wait, hold on.
Got your hemp nuts here.
Hemp nuts here.
So wait, hold on. We didn't officially acknowledge this, and we really need to officially acknowledge that the team of 3 has been increased to be the team of 4 here on New Hemp Time. So Randy Cameron, thank you for
my
officially
God.
joining the New
Yeah.
Hemp
I was just
Times
born.
group.
Mhm.
I was born this week.
But here's
Oh,
the kicker:
shush.
if you notice,
What?
there's only 3 mics.
I know.
We
Well,
can share one.
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
it has to be 3 mics.
I just like that my hair's really big in that. I love that picture.
And
That is
Randy's
so
not that light skinned.
Yeah, it's like a little Spanish in there. Randito.
It's Dominicano.
Dominicano.
Oh my God.
Hmm?
Oh my God. You sound like the guy that was in my apartment today.
Whoa.
Excuse me?
What?
Janet.
Therapy session.
Oh, God.
We have listeners. Jan.
Oh. This the part of Hemp Times y'all been waiting for.
Call in with your stories about
Children, log off. Log off now.
oh man, our rating just went from PG-13 to like question mark.
We can get 1,000 new listeners.
You told me you wanted to be me
Hey.
here, Greer.
Oh, man. What?
You told me you wanted to be me here. But I
Yeah,
was like,
be
I don't
you.
know.
Yeah, let it out.
Let it
Like,
go.
so
Maybe
it's
I
funny
shouldn't
when you
shut
just speak. I know, but why was he in your apartment?
Fixing something in my ceiling.
That's
I
how it
was
starts.
fixing the light.
I came to fix the light in the ceiling.
Right.
Oh my God, I'm not going to be able to look at him the same way again. He's such a nice guy, too. I'm sorry.
That's
When
what
he
they
tunes
all say.
in next week. I need to fix another light.
Then your neighbor came over to use the shower, right? Is that-
Oh, my cheeks hurt from laughing so much. Oh, my
my
God.
God.
oh man, I totally lost my place in this. So we're gonna have to just pick one at random now.
Jan.
Nice.
And my mother's listening.
Oh no.
Sorry,
All right.
Gail.
Really?
Oh.
So we're gonna go up north to Canada. And we're gonna talk. We got to find out if this is something it's a finding, something real, or is this totally made up? Cannabis smog causes public outcry in Metro Vancouver. Is this a real story that cannabis smog causes public outcry?
No.
There are hazes out there in the sky.
And we're only talking the visual stuff, not the smell.
It could be the smell as well. That smell.
Greer's gonna eat now.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are.
You can't eat.
You have to share it with the class.
No, that's why I'm not eating.
He did not bring enough for everybody.
He didn't bring. He's not sharing his cookies, people, or his cookie.
I just forgot I had the thing. You know it's bad for you because it's got oil.
Oil,
I
look
know.
at that.
I know.
Where'd you buy it from?
From the cannabis spot.
No, he did not.
I'm kidding. Mrs. Fields.
Just kill Mrs. Fields.
Mrs. Cannabis Fields.
Whoa.
Whoa, see, we throwing out
Fourth
this.
one,
Oh my
bro.
God, y'all paying attention.
Are you taking notes?
Are we taking notes?
Yeah.
Of course we are.
Nice
So,
one. Though.
so are people in Canada complaining about the skunky smells and smog being produced by their grow operations and commercial facilities? Has there been public